Greetings, book lovers everywhere. My name is E-Train and welcome to E-Train Talks. I'm joined today by debut middle grade author of the Curious League of Detectives and Thieves series and all-around great person, Tom Phillips. Everybody give a round of applause for Tom.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. You've been such an inspiration and positive force for me. And your support for my book journey has really been outstanding, and I'm so appreciative.
Well, you deserve it. You are doing great, and we're going to get you more followers because honestly, if you're a writer and you're on Twitter and you're doing mid grade and you don't have E-Train as a follower or you're not following him, then you're missing out because this is the type of kid we write for. So I'm telling you right now, go click on the link and subscribe because he's got a lot of really great stuff to say.
And Tom Phillips has a lot of great stuff to write. He's been writing screenplays. He has some stuff in the works, which I can't talk about, unfortunately, but you might learn about it in the future. And I just gotta say, The Curious League of Detectives and Thieves is a mystery, entertaining, fun-filled, thrilling, page-turning must-read. And if you haven't pre-ordered a copy, you need to. Like, what are you thinking? You need to order a copy.
I appreciate that. I agree. Go order a copy. Yeah, this has been really exciting. The whole journey of the mid grade world has been awesome.
Yeah, and I've heard from so many middle grade authors. It's pretty difficult to write for middle grade, and just being able to write such an entertaining mystery. Um, I'm not a very harsh critic. I like almost all the books I read, but when I just jump into the Curious League of Detectives and Thieves book one, because this is a series, everybody. Book two is coming out in the future.
Uh,
Um,
June of 2023.
so next year, um, I fell in love with the characters, and I know that all of you will too. So now, before we begin, what's something that you'd like to share about yourself that people would be surprised to learn?
Oh, I am dyslexic, which means that my brain is wired in a way that I flip letters and words around. So growing up, it was really hard for me to read. Um, and now I wrote a book. So I would say to anybody out there who's dyslexic, if I can do it, you can do it. So follow your dreams.
Yeah, those are some great words. And like, look at you. Maybe you couldn't read as well, but now you've written a book that's I know that so many middle graders are gonna love, and you're writing screenplays for big movies. And I think that's just so cool how you followed your dreams, you followed your passion, which I know you're big on finding your passion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and now look at you, you're doing so amazing. You're doing amazing things. And I know that the writing community and the movie community soon, they're just gonna rave about your work.
I hope so. I hope so.
Fingers crossed, but I don't need to cross both of my hands because I know that it's gonna work out.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah.
So my first question is, aside from being a debut author, Tom is also a screenwriter. How did you balance your time as a screenwriter with a screenplay being produced by a major studio coming soon and writing? And what are some of the differences or similarities when writing plays or novels?
Okay. Well, first, time management. Man, that is a question of the ages. How do you manage your time with everything you do? I write 2 or 3 projects at the same time. And the reason why I do that is if I get blocked with one project, I can use my writing time on the other project and still feel like I'm accomplishing things. Also with deadlines, your publisher will set deadlines, but really I feel like you should set deadlines for yourself and then reward yourself if you get the deadline. So like, I'll be like, oh, I really want that comic book, or I really want that video game or something. And I'll be like, all right, if I get this chapter done by Friday, then I'm allowing myself to get that thing. And if I don't, then I don't get it. So then kind of give myself deadlines and rewards for it.
Yeah, I think that's a great strategy. Just kind of saying, hey, if you do this, then you're going to get this, and you really want this. So just get this done. Not being specific about anything. I just think it's so inspirational, and everything that you're doing, it's just like, and also trying to manage your time, being a middle grade writer, being a screenwriter, it's all a lot. And the way you manage your time, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, it's a skill that you want to learn. So and like you're 11, so you're in the 5th grade, and you're
Yeah.
about to go into middle school, and then middle school you have more teachers and more things, and just know that it's going to be a fun. It's try to make the challenge fun, because it is going to be a challenge, and it's a challenge for everyone. So you're not alone.
Yeah, it is definitely going to be a challenge. There's so many challenges, but yeah, if you can find a fun way, just make your own little spin on a challenge, like from writing a chapter to writing a scene in a screenplay, it makes it a whole lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings me to my
Um,
next question. Oh,
Oh, I
sorry.
was going to say the similarities between novels and screen. Everything has what we call a format, right? And I like to follow the hero's journey. So if you don't know the hero's journey, you can look that up and learn more. But every epic movie, from Star Wars to Lord of the Rings to Hunger Games, everything follows the hero's journey. So when I plot out my book, I actually follow the hero's journey, only with, instead of pages. In a screenplay, you do it by pages, because you have 90 to 120 pages depending on a thing, and each page is 1 minute in a movie. I will plot that out for chapters in a book. So my book has 26 chapters. They were split up basically with points. So there's 12 points. So it's about every couple chapters I hit a point in the hero's journey when I plan.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to put it. And the similarities between screenplays and books, they're pretty evident, especially if you're writing a mystery, fast paced novel that almost feels like a movie and actually writing a movie.
Yeah, and the difference between movies and novels is just time. So you have more time in a novel. So that's when you see and read a novel and you go see the movie and there's a whole bunch cut out. It's because if you told every detail in the novel, the movie would be like 6 hours long, and no one wants to see a 6 hour long movie. So they have to cut it down to like the very, plot points that keep the plot moving, and cut out some of the extra. And it's always why the book is always, people are always like, oh, the book is so much better than the movie, but it's because you get more of the book.
So next time you see a movie that is absolutely, or so you think, nothing like the books, now you have a little perspective. So don't go hating on movies like that.
Yeah.
So that brings me to my next question. I had the honor of reading an advanced reader's copy of your book, and I have to say, it is filled with everything needed for a mystery: detectives, crime solving, just a fast paced, thrilling read. It even has monkeys. I mean, if something has monkeys, how could you not like it? So, where did you get the idea for such a fun filled storyline?
Oh man. Okay, so the series of unfortunate events is one of my favorite books. It's one of my favorite book series. So I would say that inspired me a lot. The other thing is, I really love mysteries. I'm a true crime fanatic, so I love mysteries. I love trying to solve mysteries. I love puzzles. So it's all kind of put into one thing. So that was a lot of inspiration. The other thing is, there's this director named Peter Bogdanovich, and he has a movie called What's Up, Doc, with Barbara Streisand and Ryan O'Neal. It came out in the 70s. You've probably never seen it. You've probably never heard of it, but it's hilarious. And if you ever have a chance to see it, that's a lot of my inspiration. I like movies like that, or like Clue, where it's a mystery, but it's also really funny. So
Yeah, comedies mixed into thrillers. I think that's just a brilliant style of movies. It can keep you interested, and it can also keep you laughing. So it's always good to find a movie that can make you laugh, and also you don't just not want to watch it anymore. Like maybe if there's a bad joke, you just, oh, I want to keep watching it because there's also a mystery. There's so much going on, and it's just such a thriller.
yeah.
So I don't want to give the story away, but having the story begin in a museum really caught my interest, and the backstory was very moving. Is there any reason why you chose the setting to start in a museum?
Yeah, so the Curious League is about found family. You'll find a lot of themes with mid grade where the child's parents are gone and the child's on his own, and a lot of that is because we, as middle grade writers, our audience are kids learning to have independence. So if you have a kid with perfect parents and awesomeness, then there's no arc, there's no adventure for them to go on. So a lot of people do that. I lived in New York City for a long time, and one of my favorite things in the world is the Museum of Natural History. It's the American Museum of Natural History. In my book, I called it the New York Museum of Natural History for reasons you'll find out later. But I was there. I used to draw there all the time. I used to go and draw all the animals and the exhibits, and I love museums, and I grew up in museums. And I was there one time, and there was a little kid who was lost, and I was like, where are you? Why are you here? And he's like, oh, my mom told me to come here if I ever get lost. And then of course his mom showed up like 2 minutes later, and she's like, there you are. And it was really interesting that the museum in New York is such an easy place to get to, and really know, like, you really know it. So everybody knows where it's at. So it was a way for them, if they get lost in the city, to go. So it kind of sparked the whole idea that here's an orphan who doesn't have a mother, and he goes to wait on the steps for her to come get him. And then when she never shows up, he just stays at the museum and lives there. It's also a book called The Mixed Up Files of Miss Basil E. Frankweiler, which is about two kids that live in a museum. And that's a very classic middle grade book that I grew up with and love. So I wanted to make sure when I wrote my book that I paid a homage to classic middle grades like Basil E. Frankweiler and The Mixed Up Files, and things like that.
Well, it's always important to pay a tribute to the books that inspired you to write your books, because those inspirations, like, someday, like, a lot of kids might not recognize them. So like your books, like, kind of being a love letter to the classics, they might inspire young readers to try something new, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, and it's a way to get you to read, people to read other books. Like, they'll read my book and they'll be like, oh, I want more books like that. And I'm like, okay, well, now you can read Mixed Up Files, you know. And I love contemporary mid-grade too. I mean, I love Spy School. I love The Bad Guys.
Those are great books. Yeah,
great books. A lot of fun.
So you kind of add contemporary, mystery, thriller, all these different genres into your book. And it's not like crazy with all these different genres. It actually, you make the storyline just amazing. Like, I don't know how you do it. You add all these different genres that are totally different to each other and just connect them in a way that just I found really fascinating.
So the thing with mid-grade too is that with mysteries, sorry, not mid-grade, with mysteries, you write backwards. Okay, so you plot backwards. So you start with who is the thief or killer or whatever, and then you work backwards, laying out all the clues, and then you write it forward. So there's this thing where we would say you plot through the criminal's eyes, and then you write through the detective's eyes. So you hit all those points. And that makes it a lot easier to combine a lot of things. My book is set in a contemporary world, just not quite our world, but is our world. So I took a lot of liberties on things. There's restaurants and jazz clubs and different places that I have in New York City. And if you actually went to that corner, there is a diner there. There is a steakhouse that used to be a speakeasy. They all exist. I just changed their names because of obvious reasons, but yeah, it's true to the city.
Yeah, and I love that it's true to the city, because everybody, if you read The Curious League of Detectives and Thieves, I highly suggest going to New York City and checking out those places for yourself. You might see similarities, and you might find a new understanding of the book.
Yeah, and New York City's awesome.
Yeah, New York City is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I read that you were inspired by the classic Agatha Christie books, as well as Clue and What's Up, Doc, to write The Curious League of Detectives and Thieves. So what are some similarities and differences between the classic movies and books that inspired you and The Curious League of Detectives and Thieves?
A lot of it has to do with comedy. Comedy has always been a higher form of writing. And there's different types of comedies. So there's from sophomore comedy, which are like fart jokes, to slapstick, like the Three Stooges, to wordplay like Groucho Marx or like Friends. And I was really inspired. I'm inspired by comedy through those things. My parents watched, Groucho Marx and What's Up, Doc, Peter Bogdanovich, and of course Clue came out in the 80s, and that's huge for all of us. And like, I grew up with that kind of comedy. The Muppets do a lot of that kind of comedy. And then I also grew up, both my parents were from law enforcement, so I grew up with detectives, and I have always loved mysteries, so I just kind of mixed the two together. It's kind of like if the Muppets were in Death of the Nile, what would it look like? And then that's kind of where the book comes out.
So you kind of combined all the books that you loved into one thrilling read, one
Yeah.
entertaining read. Yeah.
And like I don't have any kids of my own. I have a couple nephews that are your age, but I don't have any kids of my own. And a lot of mid-grade writers are parents, you know.
Yeah.
So when I went at it, I was like, well, I want to write something for kids, but I also want to write something that I really enjoy. So the book is sort of made so parents could read to kids, older kids could read to themselves, you know, parents could listen to it on an audiobook while they're driving their kids to grandma and grandpa's across state lines and still enjoy it and not be annoyed by it, you know, things like that. So it was kind of a mix between things, although I'm told by all the kids that I hit it pretty well. So I think that also might just be because inside I'm still a 14-year-old boy. So like those are the kind of things, like I watch cartoons, those are the things I enjoy. So my own demographic.
I mean, everybody likes cartoons, no matter how old you are.
It's true.
And I do love books that kind of connect not just with kids, but also with adults. Like there are a lot of books that do that with my mom, my dad. They sometimes go like, hey, can I read your book? I want to see if I like it. And a lot of the times they do. So middle grade, it's not just for middle graders. It's kind of like the middle for everybody.
Yeah. Well, in middle grade books, you know, they didn't exist 20 years ago, the genre of middle grade, the books did. But like once Harry Potter came out, then it started to have this thing where kids are super intelligent, as you are, but might not be emotionally ready for a YA book. So this is a way for kids to have reading that challenges them, but still keeps it in a you know, emotional level that they can still kind of grasp onto. And I think that then becomes nostalgic for all of us because we were all middle school kids at one point and we all got through it, and you'll get through it too. But so the books, I think middle grade authors a lot of times are writing for a range of people, because also with middle grade books, you have gatekeepers, right? Like your mom isn't going to let you read certain books. Yeah. She's gonna be like, hey, you can't read that, you're not adult enough to read it. So I want to write a book that she's going to enjoy and you're going to enjoy, and then you guys have something to talk about and be together. So
yeah, and I think that it's great that we kind of like authors, like publishers, we all kind of found common ground, like because middle graders aren't ready for young adult. We don't really understand that kind of story, but we're also too old for picture books.
Oh yeah.
So we have to find the common ground, and we did with Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, The Curious League, and all these other book series. They're kind of, we can understand them because we're going through that currently, and it's kind of a great outlet.
Yeah.
So which character in your fantastic mystery is your most treasured?
Oh man, that's so hard. Okay, so in high school, my nickname was Toad. So that's where Toadius McGee comes from. My best friends were Scott Redder, who's Scotty Moose, John Randall Davis, who's John Randall Borhog, who's the lead character, and Tanny Cayman Gotini, and Tanny, let me reverse that. Tanny Cayman Nanda. I'm pronouncing Cayman wrong, and I'm sorry, Tanny. It's come on. Anyway, so the Great Gotini, we called him Goat, and we called Randall Pig, and we called Scotty Moose. So I made those characters based off of it. So that's why you have Boardhog, the Great Gotini, and Toadius McGee. So those are sort of my four favorite. And then of course Shim Sham the monkey is everybody's favorite. The next book takes place in a cruise ship in the sky.
A cruise ship in the sky. Wow.
Yeah, it's like Titanic with balloons. Yeah, I have 12 books planned. I'm hoping that the publisher also wants to do 12 books. Right now we have 2 books written, and I'm hoping to get a third one here soon. We're going to find out. So buy the book so we can have a third book. No, I was kidding. But yeah, I have 12 books and then it'll be out. Like the 12th book is the end. It will end the series. I have an end planned because I feel like stories should end. Like stories shouldn't just keep going.
But in a sense, the story is still going. The stories never end, even if the series ends.
Yes.
And maybe, who knows, maybe there might be a spin-off of some of the characters.
Yeah, I've been teasing, my editor has been teasing me about having a Shim Sham spinoff.
That would be funny.
I keep saying it would just say the Curious League, and then instead of detectives and thieves, it would just say monkeys and monkeys, and just like cross it out. But that'd be funny.
And I like how Toadies McGee and Shim Sham, they kind of understand each other. Like I don't really know how he understands monkeys. There's some sort of backstory there that we might learn.
Yeah, there are certain people in the world that speak monkey, and
yeah, I know that you love monkeys, so maybe it's you too.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel like I speak monkey. Not as well as the monkeys speak English, but yeah.
Yeah, because the monkeys are speaking English, we just aren't smart enough to understand them, maybe.
Yeah, and this book has a lot of themes about that, like good guys versus bad guys. Are there such thing as bad guys? Are there such thing as good guys? It really, one of the things that I wrote about this book is to battle toxic masculinity. So you learn the 37 rules of being a good detective. What you're really learning is 37 rules that I feel 37 rules to help you be a better person. So, so that will come in about Todius and Shim Sham and their past and where you were at one point in time and where you are now, because people change as they get older. Yeah, so like I'm big about that, about the toxic masculinity. I feel like the times have changed so much since I was a boy. So like, you're facing a whole new challenge, and luckily your generation is so cool about equality and all that stuff. Like you're just insanely cool about it. So it's not really that hard of work for me, but it's really, we really have to change that. We really have to teach men to be better so that they grow up to be better men, or teach boys to be better so they grow up to be better men. And then that'll help with women and minorities and everything else, because we can be allies then instead of enemies.
Yeah, and even nobody's perfect, but all we can do is try. And the Curious League and so many other books are doing their best, and they're teaching a lot of kids valuable lessons.
Yeah, and it's okay if you mess up. I mean, we all messed up. It's just what you do after you mess up is really what decides whether you're a good person or a bad person. You might say something to a friend that is offensive. You're mad at them and you say something mean to them. That doesn't end your friendship if you go and then apologize and say, hey, I was wrong. I did this thing. It hurt you, and I'm not going to do that thing again. Then you can fix that. But and obviously there's exceptions to the rules, like physical violence and whatnot. But it's okay to say I'm wrong. It's okay to say I did wrong. It's okay to say I was the bad guy in the situation. And I think we as people always want to be the hero of our story, but we never think about being the villain of somebody else's story. And it's okay to be the bad guy as long as you realize you were the bad guy, admit you were the bad guy, and then try to do good from that.
Yeah, that's a very valuable lesson, and it's pretty evident. I saw it a lot in the Curious League as well as some other books. So I thought that the cover of your book was really just beautiful. I love how they added gloss to the red ruby, and I know that you rave about it, and I know a lot of people really do like your cover. So how do you really describe the process? How do you create a cover of a book?
Okay, so the cover of the book, this is really interesting because every publisher is a little bit different. So I can't speak for all publishers, but it ranges from some of my friends who had no control of their cover. They only saw it when they released the book, to people like me where they said, what do you want on your cover? And then I got to make a suggestion, and then the artist, whose name is Stephen Gilpin, and he is just insanely good. He's such a great artist. He brought my characters to life in a way that I could never imagine. And all I said was, I really think that it should be John holding the ruby, and then in the ruby maybe the reflections of all the characters that could be the mauve moth, and then he did the rest. He just made it. I mean, he hit it out, knocked it out of the park in the first try. So it was incredible. And the second cover is so cool. I'm so excited. I can't wait for people to see it, because it takes it up a notch. And yeah, so some people don't. So what they do is they ask, there's a designer who reads the cover or reads the book. They take notes, they hire the illustrator, then the illustrator draws the illustration, and then the designer whose name is Jay Colvin, then puts it all together. So it's a team of people, and then my editor takes it to her bosses and the marketing team and the publicity team, and everybody has a say in it because it's so important. So, 12, 13 people have to say yes before a cover works in our publisher, and they all loved it, and I love it. So it's perfect.
I do love the cover, and it's a whole process. And this is kind of why I do my interviews. I love learning about the process of books, how they go into action. But I've never really asked about the cover of a book before. But this one really caught my eye. The gloss that they add, everything going on in the background, it's all kind of ties the book together. But if you don't read The Curious League of Detectives and Thieves, you won't really know what's going on. But after reading it, I can tell that this cover, here it is, it's also in Tom's background, it's one of the best I've ever seen. So hats off to the designer, the illustrator, and your whole team. And now, we've talked about the details, we've talked about the backstories, but now it's time for the very fun questions. And these are actually audience participation. So play along in the comments or on Twitter replies. Just post what your thoughts, what your answers would be to these questions, because it's participation, and these are all fun questions that I may ask you one day if you have the wonderful chance to be on E-Train Talks. Of course, I know that there are a lot of other bigger podcasters, but little old me would like to meet you. So, do you treat your MG books like a screenplay you're working on?
I do in the plotting. I make sure that I write down every plot point of what needs to happen from A to B. But then when I actually start writing, it changes a little bit, because screenplays are so structured, what it has to look like and how much dialogue versus how much description. And books, you can kind of go as far as you want, and then your editor tells you to cut it out. It's the editor's job to make it run smooth.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding, Allison. But yeah. So so there's two types of writers, right? So there's the pantsers and the plotters. And plotters are people that plot out everything and then write. And pantsers are people who are like, let's just jump in there and see where my characters take me. And I'm not a pantser. I have way too much control issues to be one, but boy, do pantsers, I have a lot of respect for them. But I plot everything.
So audience, are you a pantser or are you a plotter? Put it in the replies. And to be honest, I'm more of a pantser, although I'm starting to kind of shift to being a plotter, because now that I'm learning about new strategies, I don't think it's as smart to write 7 chapters off the bat. I think plotting, I'm starting to really realize how important plotting a book is, because you can't just, some people do it and do it successfully, but it's really hard to just jump into a story and follow the characters, because it all ties into the plot, and you need plot points to kind of make a story be a success, because if you have plot points, you know what's going to happen. It's just like the body between the 2 points. You have the intro to your letter and the ending to your letter, and the middle is the body, and you know how it's going to start and how it's going to end. So since you know that, it's kind of your job to just tie it all together.
Yeah, well, I think so. My metaphor for this is if you're going on a road trip from Los Angeles to New York City. Some people just jump in the car and go, you know what, I'm going to end up at New York City, and I'll get there when I get there, and we'll just drive and see what happens. And other people are like, okay, I have X amount of gas to go, so I'm going to figure out every gas station between, or every landmark I want to see between, and then we're going to go from this to this landmark, and this landmark to that landmark. And doesn't mean you can't veer off course and go see something else that catches your eye and then get back on course. Or you get to you get halfway through to St. Louis and you're like, okay, I don't really want to see the arch. I'd rather go up north, so I'm going to skip that one. You can do that. Just because you plotted it out doesn't mean you have to go directly to those plot points, but it does help you get back in when you've gone so far. You're like, where am I? What am I doing? You're like, oh yeah, I need to go to Twin Falls, and then you get there. That's why I like to plot. And I think that pantsers, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll just go, they know the beginning, they know the end, they'll get to their end, and then they'll go back through it and be like, all right, well, this was boring, I'll cut this out. This didn't really matter, so I'll cut this out, which is fine. That's,
I think it's kind of like, in the end, plotting and plotters and pantsers, they kind of become the same, because after you write your book, like just spiely as a pantser, you have to go back and plot the points, and then boom, everybody's kind of a plotter and a pantser. You may change and you may not.
Well, and like with screenwriting, we call our first draft the vomit draft, where we just get all of our ideas on page, and then we go back and like move things and fix things. So if you're writing a book, my suggestion is just finish it. Just don't worry if it's good or bad or indifferent. Just get to the end and then go back through and edit. Don't try to edit every chapter, because you'll never finish the book, because you can always go back and change a chapter. The first chapter of Curious League has been written more times than enough times that if you put them all next to each other, it would be a series of books. Like, so, but get through it and then go back through and change things.
Yeah, and I think you did something like that, and you're successful. You have a published book that's coming out in June, June. So that's just a month away, and you were a plotter, but you're also in a sense a pantser as well. You get through everything, but you have a plan, and I think like plotters and pantsers, you can't be a pantser without a plan. So I think it all kind of ties into having a plan.
And honestly, it doesn't matter how you write as long as you get to the end. Like it's and everybody gets there. The other thing with writing in the writing world, it's so subjective. So like somebody might not like monkeys, so they don't pick up your book, right? They don't, like an agent's like, oh, I'm going to pass on this book. I don't like monkeys. Or, I don't like Egypt, so I'm out, kind of thing. Or they might, like Anne Rose read my book and fell madly in love with it and picked me up out of the slush pile completely. Like, I'm still dumbfounded, because I've read other books that she's passed on, and I'm like, well, how did you pass on this book? And she's like, well, it's this thing, I don't like this, I like that. So it's really everybody else's opinion on whether it gets there or not. So just don't give up. I had 100. Of course,
you are amazing, Anne. You are amazing. And happy birthday.
Anne Rose, it's her birthday today. Happy birthday. She is literally the greatest agent in the business. If you aren't querying to Anne Rose, then why are you even trying? Like, she literally is the best in the business. She's so amazing. I have nothing bad to say about her. Without her, I would be no one. She's amazing. What I was going to say is I had 163 rejections.
Wow.
From it before Anne picked up my book. She was actually the 37th one I which is hilarious because 37 is my number, but she was the 37th agent I queried on my list, but 163 people rejected my book, and now it's being published. So just keep going, because everybody's book matters.
The querying process, I've heard a lot about it. It's pretty stressful from what I've heard. But as long as you just keep going, you're going to find the agent, you're going to find the publisher that's right for you. Because if someone rejects you, that means you're not the right fit. You're eventually going to find the right fit, or maybe it just wasn't meant to be, but keep going.
Yeah, it's like dating, which you haven't got to yet, but it's the same thing. When you meet someone, maybe they're not the right person for you, and that doesn't mean they're bad people. It's just not your person, and you'll meet your person.
So do you have any other writing projects in the making?
I'm working on a zombie survival guide.
Wow.
It's actually a survival guide for middle school, but it's called Mike and Tom's Handy Dandy Guide to Surviving the Apocalypse, and it's about how to get through middle school, but it's like based on thing. I have a book that I'm working on called that's about two brothers that are on a treasure hunt, sort of like Goonies. And then I just finished Curious League 2. And I plotted out Curious League 3, hoping that we'll get that going too. So that's where I'm at.
That's all really exciting. And the guide to middle school, I love those sort of books because they seem kind of interactive, and they're also just so true. It doesn't matter how fictitious it is. Whether you're fighting zombies in middle school, it's all kind of based on real life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. I'm trying to get a man named Stan Yan to do the artwork. And
I've heard of him.
Yeah, Stan he's great. If you need to follow him on Twitter,
I have been, and he follows me. He sounds really amazing.
Yeah, his stuff is like Calvin and Hobbes meets Tim Burton. It's really cool. It's really cool stuff.
Well, I'm gonna advocate for you as much as I can. Stan Yan, you have to do the drawings for Tom Phillips' book.
Thank you.
So, if you were trapped on a deserted island and can only bring one book, what book would it be and why? Also, please try and not make it an island survival book.
Okay. Yeah. Island survival book. No. I think that. Oh my gosh, one book. That's terrible.
I know. Well, I
I
mean, it
would
could be a
either,
series.
okay. Oh, if I had a series, then Nancy Drew, because there's 557 books. No.
I don't know how you'd bring all that on one boat, but
No. I don't know. My favorite book is The Alchemist. It's a great book.
I know there are a lot of alchemists. So which
Pablo Quijilo. I'm pronouncing your last name wrong, and I'm sorry, sir. But
I don't know if he's listening.
well, he might be. You never can tell. But he's brilliant. That's a brilliant book. I'm also really I have a love for the Never-Ending Story series, Unfortunate Events, which I've read 1,000 times. The Christmas Carol is one of my favorite books. Any one of those.
Yeah. Well, it's always good to have 557 books with you on a deserted island because, I mean, you need something to pass the time. And I don't think like drawing faces on coconuts or playing coconut ball with yourself is really going to pass the time very well.
No, I would have to go. Yeah, Nancy Drew, 557 books. That would be the best.
Have you read every single one of them?
No. I made a really good chunk in the Hardy Boys, but I haven't read them all.
Wow. So 557 books, that would definitely last me as well. Like just having such a long series. Also, was it the same author for every single book?
No, many authors have written for Nancy over the years, but
so it's kind of like the 31 Clues.
Like, yeah, I think the first person, I think they wrote like 60 books. I think it was 60. You have to Google it and figure it out. But the first person who wrote Nancy Drew wrote a lot, and then it's been a lot of different people. And actually, my editor, Allison Weiss, worked on some of the Hardy Boys and Tom Swift, and I think Nancy Drew as an editor.
Was there anyone who inspired you to work in the writing industry? A parent, a teacher, or a role model?
Wow. Okay. So my English teacher in high school's name was Jan Powell. And she convinced me I wasn't stupid because I thought I was dumb because I was dyslexic and it was hard to read. So she set me on this journey. And then I met a professor in college named Peter Ivanoff, and he taught Shakespeare. And he taught me the love of storytelling and how beautiful the written word could be. And that really started me on my journey of becoming a writer, was because Peter taught us Shakespeare and then really broke it down, as Shakespeare teachers do, because it's almost its own language, and really explained the passion and the beauty of the written word. So if it weren't for Jan Powell and Peter Ivanoff, I wouldn't be writing.
It's time for my final question. This is a question that I love asking, and I love learning about all the different answers. Like, although most of them are Harry Potter, there's at least some variety in the Harry Potter section. But if you could be any character or meet any character in any book, who would you be, or who would it be, and why?
Oh man, okay. I would be Atreyu in the Never-Ending Story, because that's the coolest adventure ever, and I would love to run around Fantasia. And if I could meet anyone, like in any storybook for like real, it would be Paddington Bear.
He's pretty cool, yeah.
He's really cool. I love Paddington, and I
like the movies.
Just love to hear all of his thoughts and things. Yeah, the movies are my favorite movies ever. I want the Paddington team to make Curious League.
Maybe Paul, you can add them, because I mean it is a fictitious book.
Yeah, hey Paul, if you're out there, you could direct and write the Curious League movie. Just call me. No, just kidding.
Yeah. So thank you all so much for listening, and thank you, Tom, for joining me today. It's been such a pleasure